So it was my family the other day, and one of my cousins threw in the new Lorde song. And of course, right away, all my aunts and uncles, they didn't really like it as much as me and my cousins did, right? And of course, if you guys don't know, Lorde is an artist who's really known for her lyricism. She writes amazing lyrics. So all my cousins were like, no, listen to the lyrics. Listen to the words in these songs, right? And I'm not gonna act like they sat down with a notebook and dissected it. They didn't do that, but they listened for a little bit and they're like, no, not getting it, not grabbing me at all, right? And we were like, huh, that's interesting. And they said, just can't get into this type of music, right? This is if you guys are ever playing music for your parents, you'll always hear them say this. Just can't get into that type of music, right? You'll be playing a song that is so beautiful, it moved you from the day you were born, and they will, nope, this type of music doesn't work for me, right? It's one of the most frustrating things to hear. But my aunt said something really interesting. She said, the artist with the words that move me the most is the Dave Matthews Band. For context, I've never listened to a Dave Matthews song in my life. He could have amazing lyrics. I have no idea. But I know that what she said next really got me thinking. She was like, I know you guys will never listen to it because you don't like guitars. You don't like the musicality. But if you could just read his words, it would change your perspective on everything. And I think she cuts, first and foremost, before I even get into the point of all this, I think she does cut through to sort of a truth here, right? Something that's objectively a fact, right? Different things appeal to different generations for very obvious reasons. For an example, I grew up listening to a lot of Green Day, was exposed to a lot of classic rock growing up. So now, coming here in the year 2025, guitars definitely interest me a little bit less than things like synths and, digital production, right? Because if you grow up hearing something all the time, it obviously gets less and less interesting to you. Just like when people come here and visit me in New York, they're in awe at everything around me, and I'm like, I've seen this, I've seen all this, right? It's the same way with music, and that can't be ignored here. But I do think that besides that, my aunt does kind of miss a point here that it is interesting, isn't it? That cutting past the guitars, because I do listen to a lot of music with the guitars, as much as it might not interest me quite as much. I still listen to it, and getting past that, there's something about the words of an artist in the 1980s that can never quite hit the same as the words of an artist nowadays. Bob Dylan's another great example of this, right? For context, I love Bob Dylan. Been a fan of Bob Dylan for quite a while now, right? My uncle got me into him. And I think Bob Dylan's an amazing lyricist. I really do. I think he totally deserves all his flowers as one of the greatest of all time. I will never be able to relate to those lyrics the way that my uncle does because he grew up with it. He listened to it as it was coming out. And there's something interesting about that. I think right away I want to jump to the idea of just like modernity, right? Maybe when you're in the 60s listening to Bob Dylan, the topics he's speaking about are far more relevant, and it's just gonna hit you a little, it's gonna hit a little harder because you're in the middle of it. When Bob Dylan's doing a song about the civil rights movement, in the middle of the civil rights movement, it's gonna be a little bit more visceral than us looking back now with, the sanitized version of history that we have, and all we have are pictures and recordings, right? There's an obvious element to that, just in the same way that, like the Lorde song, you could say, that Lorde song, Man of the Year, for context, is about has a lot to do with gender identity, right? Obviously, the older folk aren't going to relate to that as somebody who implicitly, if you are between the ages of 18 and 25, you're like fairly educated on the opinions of people on this, on how it works. You've probably encountered a good amount of people who are diverse in their identifications, right? So you are going to be able to understand and relate to that in a way that they might not. So there's another case for that, right? Maybe you could say, if we could find a Bob Dylan song that's about love, something a little bit more timeless, and then find a Lorde song that's also about love, something a little bit more timeless, the lyrics would hit me and my cousins the same way that it would hit the older people in my family. I think that's a point that should be entertained. I think there's cutting to a truth in that, but I still don't think it would be the same, right? And I want to speak about lyrics only here, because I think that there's a larger conversation to be had, for sure, and probably a conversation I'm going to title this video around, that like, art has a way of hitting different generations differently. But I think music is an example I really want to isolate down here, especially with lyrics, because some of the other stuff you can say like, okay, guitars don't hit the same because it's a little bit more tired out. We've seen guitars in so many forms. The kids want something new. They want the synths. They want I don't know what happens on FL Studio. I've never opened it in my life. I've made 2 beats on GarageBand. They're the best thing you'd ever hear, of course. But I have no idea what the instruments are, but, it makes enough sense. The kids want something new, right? I get that. I don't know why I'm saying it if I'm not one of the kids myself. But, paintings too. I think paintings have a fairly timeless quality, especially because of the way they're presented to us. Don't think paintings really move people to different lyrics or something that have such a visceral movement to them that I think can be isolated down and spoken about really interestingly here. Let's talk about slang, right? The way that we phrase something in 2025 is very different than the way somebody would phrase something back in the 1960s, right? I don't know, like right now, right? You'll hear people, I think this is like brain rot joke slang. I've never heard somebody in real life use it, and I think I distance myself from them right away if they did. Not even distance like emotional, like physically, I think I would get out of the room. But like you'll hear people be like the huzz or whatever, right? That's like the term for girls nowadays. That's like a kind of a jokey term. Shoddy or whatever was a thing in like 2013. Bae was a thing. Words transform for this. So when Bob Dylan has a song called "It Ain't Me, Babe," the word "babe" is automatically a little bit outdated. I mean, like when was the last time you heard somebody say "babe"? Just like I can only imagine in 30 years when we're playing Future for all our kids, and they hear the word "shoddy," they're gonna be like, "Yeah, what are we? Some young whippersnappers?" You know what I mean? There's something about slang that, as much as that pained me, that I just had to say the words "shoddy," "bae," "huzz," and "babe" in a paint and talk that will be on the internet publicly for people to see, possibly even employers. Those words I can't believe I just did that. Let's recalibrate here, guys. Slang changes over time, right? Words change over time. Topics change over time, right? We discussed that about the civil rights movement of Bob Dylan's music and, some of the more modern themes of Lord's music, right? Just as themes change over time, so do words. Words change, slightly interplayed with those themes. As new words come out to describe new things, some of it gets picked up as slang. The way that we disseminate our art also has a lot to do with it, right? Maybe that slang is just enough to make us not relate, right? Like, for an example, if you're listening to a song, let's say I play a song for you and you have no idea what year it's from, and they're using words like babe and whippersnapper and like what speakeasy, I don't know what they were talking about back then. They're using these words. You're gonna easily be like, okay, this is an older song. And implicitly, maybe you'll be like, this doesn't speak to me the same way a newer song does, because I can relate to the themes of a song about gender identity, because that's something I'm experiencing in the year 2025. That's something that, whether I am, no matter how I identify, I have to, at one point, come into contact with that. I think especially too, depends on the audience a lot, you know what I mean? I don't think the Post Malone fans are gonna head over to that Lorde song and maybe relate to it. I don't know though, who's to say, right? The audience here, of course, matters a lot, but relation has something to do with it. Maybe implicitly, people will just kind of tune it out the second they hear some of these slang terms, right? I kind of don't like that answer, though. I think that it's an interesting answer, but I don't really like it because I think that, like, so much of art exists in these abstract forms, right? We talked about this a little while ago of, like, you can relate to songs about things you've never gone through. You can watch movies about wars that you've never been in and feel those emotions. Why would it be that, like, we can't listen to Bob Dylan songs about the civil rights movement and take it and apply them to the liberation movements of today? People do that all the time. I mean, that's something that genuinely just is happening in the modern day that people are doing with these songs. Clearly, people are okay with these things existing in an abstract, right? So why do different voices speak to different generations? If we're able to put things into these abstracts, right, and if we're able to relate to them in their abstract forms, how come we have this concept of a voice of a generation? I think oftentimes, and I mean, like, people are gonna hate that I'm saying this, people are gonna really disagree. Oftentimes you'll hear like Kendrick Lamar referred to as the voice of this generation, right? Bob Dylan, definitely referred to as the voice of the generation of back then, right? Folk music, all that stuff. How can that exist? I think, like, you could start making a lot of assumptions that humans just fundamentally change over time. And I don't think that's true. I genuinely think that humans are capable of relating to each other on multiple levels. So then you gotta go to the other things, right? In my opinion, at least. Of course, some of you might just think humans do change over time, and that's a very valid answer here. I don't like it myself, though. So then I go to these other things, right? I started thinking like, okay, maybe none of it has to do with anything besides made-up conceptions. Maybe we're all capable of relating to everything in all our art and all our music. But you hear the older sound, you hear the older guitar, and you go, okay, I probably won't relate to this. Or maybe it's even that you get told somebody's the voice of a generation so much that you start relating to it more than you would otherwise. Maybe it's that too. Two interesting answers here that, you know, could say that there is no such thing as lyrics changing over time and different generations relating to different things. And it's all just in our heads. An interesting answer, and I think even like almost like a, what's the term? Is it like an anti-answer when it's like, it's an answer that's basically going like, this question isn't real? Kind of doing that, right? I think that's valid. I also think that that'd just be kind of a bad ending to the discussion, though, that there's no answer, that there's no voice of a generation, and that different things don't relate to different people. You know, like if you took, this would be an interesting study, I guess. I'm against studies in art. I think it's kind of some lame shit, but let's say you did it, right? You could maybe take the lyrics to What Was That by Lorde and use like old voice models or whatever, or I guess, all the Beatles are definitely not still living. What's a band where all the members are still living? Ooh, is Dave, I don't know anything about Dave Matthews, guys, but let's say for a second that we got Dave Matthews, right? They're all still around. I don't know if they are. Rest in peace if they're not. And we get them to sing What Was That by Lorde, her newest song, right? And then we get Lorde to do a cover of a Dave Matthews song, you know, the famous song I'm Dave by Dave Matthews. Would people relate to it? Is it all just conception? That would be a way to test that answer. I mean, like, you know, all art, as much as like, some people say that art is like all context. I don't like that. I think it's kind of like, I don't know. Really? Like, I just feel like it's a little bit of a, I hate when people do statements of like art is, right? I feel like I don't like saying art is one thing. I feel like boxing and art is always going to be a non-answer to any question. But let's say, for an example, in this case, you know, let's say that context is undoubtedly a very important piece of art, even if it's not all that art is. So let's say we fully just work with context. Would people relate to it? Is it all context that's making this issue occur? Is it slang? Is it subject matter? I don't know. I think it's probably more likely something that I haven't thought of. And this is where I love to hear your guys' thoughts. Comment down below. Why do you think different art appeals to different generations in the way that it does? And what do you think is going to be, like, just for fun, what do you guys think is going to be appealing to, like, our kids? Like, when I'm 40, still in this fucking cube, painting and talking, what will my kid be listening to out there? Will it be like some AI version of Playboi Carti doing a cover of Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles? Maybe. This is the painting. Trying to do the same thing that I did yesterday of layering the faces. I want the eyes to interplay more, though. I want the faces to be just close enough where the eye, you don't know which face the eyes belong to. I'm struggling to do that. You know, the thing about this deconstruction series, which has now just turned, I mean, this has been going forever, right? But the thing about it that I've discovered is that this is the point we're at, right? This is a point that I've very consistently been able to get to, of like an interesting, you know, visually, it makes you look at it for a second painting, in my opinion at least. I mean, some of you might really not like these, and I'm sorry. Viewership has been down lately, maybe that's why. Either way, jokes aside, I'm definitely stagnated because of my skill level of making these paintings do more interesting things than they are already. And that's, I think, the next bridge I need to get to. But go follow over the Instagram. This will be up on Sunday with all the other paintings from this week if you want to get a closer look at any of them or catch up on the episodes you missed. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dyth. This has been Paint and Talk episode 164. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.